Disclaimer. This material is for entertainment purposes only, and for no other purpose. Please consult a legal professional for proper legal advice, including understanding what this document means. Please consult the actual legal document for all legal uses. This presentation is no substitute for the actual filed document. We cannot help you if you do not follow this simple, reasonable, and good advice. Please let us know about any errors in this presentation so that we can correct them. Unfortunately, we cannot and will not correct any errors made in the underlying documents, so please make sure the error is a presentation error. Thank you very much for your time, support, and interest. We hope you enjoy this content. Sponsors. Unfortunately, there are no video sponsors or channel sponsors at this time. If you would like to sponsor us, please reach out. All donations are welcome. Thank you. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and share this video with others. Doing this will help us reach other interested people, and will help to support this channel. We appreciate your action. Thank you. Chapter 3. Image: Georgia electors cast their electoral college votes at the Georgia State Capitol on December 14, 2020. Photo by Jessica McGowan, Getty Images. 3. Fake electors and the President of the Senate strategy. On the morning of January 6, in his speech at the Ellipse, President Trump exhorted his thousands of assembled supporters to march to the U.S. Capitol, explaining that we have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. This was no off-the-cuff remark, it was the culmination of a carefully planned scheme many weeks in the making. This plea by the president turned the truth on its head. There was only one legitimate slate of electors from the battleground states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and Trump wanted them rejected. This scheme involved lawyers, such as Kenneth CHESEBRO and Rudy Giuliani, as well as Mark Meadows. It also was aided at key points by Chairwoman of the Republican National Committee Ronna McDaniel, members of Congress, and Republican leaders across 7 states, some of whom did not know exactly what they were being asked to do. President Trump oversaw it himself. President Trump and his allies prepared their own fake slates of electoral college electors in 7 states that President Trump lost: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And on December 14, 2020, the date when true, certified electors were meeting to cast their electoral votes for the candidate who had won the popular vote in each of those states, these fake electors also met, ostensibly casting electoral votes for President Trump, the candidate who had lost. There was no legitimate reason for Trump electors to meet, vote, and produce fake slates on December 14 in states that former Vice President Biden won. Instead, this effort was aimed directly at the President of the Senate, which, under the Constitution, is the Vice President, in his role at the joint session of Congress on January 6. President Trump and his advisors wanted Vice President Pence to disregard real electoral college votes for former Vice President Biden, in favor of these fake competing electoral slates. But there never were real, competing slates of electors. By the time the fake Trump electors met on December 14, appropriate government officials in each of the 7 states had already certified their state's official election results for former Vice President Biden. No court had issued an order reversing or calling into question those results, and most election-related litigation was over. And as detailed in Chapter 2, despite the illicit efforts of President Trump and his allies, no state legislature had agreed to the president's request to reverse the result of the election by appointing a different slate of electors. Given all of this, these groups of Trump backers who called themselves presidential electors were never actually electors, and the votes they purported to cast on December 14 were not valid. They were fake. They had no legal standing, and their fake votes could not have been used by Vice President Pence to disregard the real votes of electors chosen by the voters. By January 6, President Trump had been discouraged by his top lawyers from following through on this plan. The Trump campaign's senior staff attorneys have concerns, and several days before the joint session, the acting Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General blocked the sending of a letter indicating that there were competing slates of electors, including in Georgia and several other states. But this reasoning did nothing to change President Trump's rhetoric or plan. He continued to assert that there were competing or dual slates of electors to create an opportunity to stay in office on January 6. These lawyers were right. President Trump's plan was illegal. In his June 7, 2022, opinion, Federal District Judge David Carter wrote that this initiative to certify alternate slates of electors for President Trump constituted a critical objective of the January 6 plan. This followed Judge Carter's earlier determination in March that the illegality of the plan was obvious, and every American, and certainly the President of the United States, knows that in a democracy, leaders are elected, not installed. With a plan this bold, President Trump knowingly tried to subvert this fundamental principle. Based on the evidence, the court finds it more likely than not that President Trump corruptly attempted to obstruct the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021. The fake elector effort was an unlawful, unprecedented and destructive break from the Electoral College process that our country has used to select its president for generations. It led directly to the violence that occurred on January 6. To address the damage that it caused, it is important to understand how it transpired. 3.1. Laying the groundwork for the fake elector plan, the CHESEBRO memos. The fake elector plan emerged from a series of legal memoranda written by an outside legal advisor to the Trump campaign, Kenneth CHESEBRO. Although John Eastman would have a more prominent role in advising President Trump in the days immediately before January 6, CHESEBRO, an attorney based in Boston and New York recruited to assist the Trump campaign as a volunteer legal advisor, was central to the creation of the plan. Memos by CHESEBRO on November 18, December 9, and December 13, as discussed below, laid the plan's foundation. CHESEBRO's first memo on November 18 suggested that the Trump campaign could gain a few extra weeks for litigation to challenge Wisconsin's election results, so long as a Wisconsin slate of Republican nominees to the Electoral College met on December 14 to cast placeholder Electoral College votes on a contingent basis. This memo acknowledged that it may seem odd that the electors pledged to Trump and Pence might meet and cast their votes on December 14 even if, at that juncture, the Trump-Pence ticket is behind in the vote count, and no certificate of election has been issued in favor of Trump and Pence. However, CHESEBRO argued that if such a slate of alternate electors gathered to cast electoral votes on a contingent basis, this would preserve the Trump campaign's options, so a court decision, or, perhaps, a state legislative determination, rendered after December 14 in favor of the Trump-Pence slate of electors should be timely. On December 9, CHESEBRO penned a second memo, which suggested another purpose for fake Electoral College votes on January 6. It stated that unauthorized Trump electors in these states could be retroactively recognized by a court, the state legislature, or Congress. Under this theory, there would be no need for a court to decide that the election had been decided in error. Instead, Congress itself could choose among dueling slates of purported electoral votes, and thereby decide the presidential election, even though Article 2 of the Constitution grants that power to the Electoral College via the states. CHESEBRO's contemporaneous communications make clear that the goal was having Congress act on the fake electoral votes. He emailed an organizer of the fake electors in Nevada that the purpose of having the electoral votes sent into Congress is to provide the opportunity to debate the election irregularities in Congress, and to keep alive the possibility that the votes could be flipped to Trump, and a legal advisor to the Arizona GOP reportedly described being told by CHESEBRO around this time that their supposed electors would just be sending in fake electoral votes to Pence so that someone in Congress can make an objection when they start counting votes, and start arguing that the fake votes should be counted. Many of the states contested by the Trump team had laws that specified requirements for electors to validly cast and transmit their votes, and the December 9, 2020, memo recognized that some of these criteria would be difficult, if not impossible, for the fake electors to fulfill. As described later, most were not fulfilled. For example, Nevada's state law required that the Secretary of State preside when presidential electors meet, and Nevada Secretary of State Barbara Seegevsk, a Republican, had already signed a certificate ascertaining the Biden-Harris electors as the authorized, winning slate. Several states also had rules requiring electors to cast their votes in the state capitol building, or rules governing the process for approving substitutes if any original proposed electors from the November ballot were unavailable. As a result, CHESEBRO's December 9, 2020, memo advised the Trump campaign to abide by such rules, when possible, but also recognized that these slates could be slightly problematic in Michigan, somewhat dicey in Georgia and Pennsylvania, and very problematic in Nevada. On December 13, the fake elector scheme became even clearer in an email sent by CHESEBRO to Giuliani. His message was entitled Brief Notes on President of the Senate Strategy. It addressed how the fake electors meeting the next day, December 14, could be exploited during the joint session of Congress on January 6 by the President of the Senate, a role that the Constitution grants to the Vice President of the United States. CHESEBRO argued that, on January 6, the President of the Senate could firmly take the position that he, and he alone, is charged with the constitutional responsibility not just to open the votes, but to count them, including making judgments about what to do if there are conflicting votes. CHESEBRO's email suggested that the President of the Senate, which under the Constitution, is the Vice President, could toss out former Vice President Biden's actual electoral votes for any state where the Trump campaign organized fake electors, simply because there are two slates of votes. Of course, there were never two slates of electoral votes, so this premise itself was fundamentally wrong. But he was arguing that even if votes by fake electors were never retroactively ratified under state law, their mere submission to Congress would be enough to allow the presiding officer to disregard valid votes for former Vice President Biden. CHESEBRO suggested this might result in a second term for President Trump, or, at minimum, it would force a debate about purported election fraud, neither of which was a lawful, legitimate reason to organize and convene fake electors. As discussed below and in Chapter 5, John Eastman worked with CHESEBRO as January 6 approached and wrote two additional memos that built upon, and extended, the plan to use the fake electoral votes during the joint session. 3.2 President Trump and the campaign adopt the fake elector scheme. In early December, the highest levels of the Trump campaign took note of CHESEBRO's fake elector plan and began to operationalize it. On December 6, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows forwarded a copy of CHESEBRO's November 18, 2020, memo to Trump campaign senior advisor Jason Miller writing, "Let's have a discussion about this tomorrow." Miller replied that he just engaged with reporters on the subject, to which Meadows wrote, "If you are on it then never mind the meeting. We just need to have someone coordinating the electors for states." Miller clarified that he had only been working the PR angle and they should still meet, to which Meadows answered, "Got it." Later that week, Miller sent Meadows a spreadsheet that the Trump campaign had compiled. It listed contact information for nearly all of the 79 GOP nominees to the Electoral College on the November ballot for Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And on December 8, Meadows received a text message from a former state legislator in Louisiana recommending that the proposed Trump electors from Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, all meet next Monday at their state capitals, call themselves to order, elect officers, and cast their votes for the president. Then they certify their votes and transmit that certificate to Washington. Meadows replied, "We are." Cassidy Hutchinson, a special assistant to the president and an assistant to Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, confirmed Meadows' significant involvement in the plan. Hutchinson told the Select Committee that Meadows followed the progress of the fake elector effort closely and that she remembered him frequently having calls, meetings, and outreach with individuals and this just being a prominent topic of discussion in our office. When asked how many of his calls or meetings it came up in, she estimated dozens. The evidence indicates that by December 7 or 8, President Trump had decided to pursue the fake elector plan and was driving it. Trump Campaign Associate General Counsel Joshua Findley was tasked by the campaign's General Counsel, Matthew Morgan, around December 7 or 8 with exploring the feasibility of assembling unrecognized slates of Trump electors in a handful of the states that President Trump had lost. Findley told the Select Committee it was my understanding that the president made this decision. As recounted by Findley, Morgan conveyed that the client, President Trump, directed the campaign lawyers to look into electors in these potential litigation states. President Trump personally called RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel days before December 14 to enlist the RNC's assistance in the scheme. President Trump opened the call by introducing McDaniel to John Eastman, who described the importance of the RNC helping the campaign to gather these contingent electors in case any of the legal challenges that were ongoing changed the results in any of the states. According to McDaniel, she called President Trump back soon after the call ended, letting him know that she agreed to his request and that some RNC staffers were already assisting. On December 13 and 14, President Trump worked with Rudy Giuliani on the plan's implementation. On the 13th, Miller texted some of his colleagues to check in about the fake elector meetings scheduled for the following day. He let them know that Giuliani had told him POTUS was aware that they would be filing litigation in 4 states just to keep the effort going, which the Select Committee believes was to create a pretext to claim that it was still possible for the fake electors to be authorized retroactively. In subsequent litigation, a federal district court found that President Trump filed certain lawsuits not to obtain legal relief, but to disrupt or delay the January 6 congressional proceedings through the courts. The next day, Miller sent an email asking whether they were going to issue a press release about electors, and he was told the mayor is going to discuss with POTUS. 3.3. The campaign legal team bows out, and Giuliani steps in. Not everyone on the campaign was eager to pursue the fake elector plan. Image, Ronna McDaniel at the Republican National Convention on August 24, 2020. Photo by Chip Samadavilla, Getty Images. On December 11, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a high-profile lawsuit filed by the state of Texas challenging the election results in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Image, Rudy Giuliani speaks inside the Republican National Committee headquarters in November about various lawsuits related to the 2020 election. Photo by Drew Anger, Getty Images. After that decision, the Trump campaign's senior legal staffers said that they reduced their involvement in the fake elector effort, apparently because there was no longer a feasible scenario in which a court would determine that President Trump actually won any of the states he contested. Justin Clark, who oversaw the Trump campaign's general counsel's office, said that he basically conveyed, "I'm out," and encouraged his colleagues on the legal team to do the same. Findley told the Select Committee that "we backed out of this thing," and Morgan, his boss, said he had Findley pass off responsibility for the electors as my way of taking that responsibility to zero. Clark told the Select Committee that it never sat right with me that there was no contingency whereby these votes would count. I had real problems with the process, Clark said, because it morphed into something I didn't agree with. In his view, the fake electors were not necessarily duly nominated electors despite being presented as such. He said he believed he warned his colleagues that unless we have litigation pending like in these states, like I don't think this is appropriate or, this isn't the right thing to do. Morgan told the Select Committee that he saw no value in pushing slates of purported electors if they were not authorized by a state government's certificate of ascertainment. As he put it, "My view was, as long as you didn't have a certificate of ascertainment, then the electors were, for lack of a better way of saying it, no good or not valid." Findley confirmed that Morgan told him after the Supreme Court ruling on December 11 that there's not really anything left for us to do on this project and that it doesn't seem like a good idea for us to be involved in it. Campaign lawyers were not the only ones who doubted the legality of the fake elector plan. The Office of White House Counsel appears to have expressed concerns about it as well. In his testimony to the Select Committee, White House counsel Pat Cipollone acknowledged his view that by mid-December, the electoral process was done. Cipollone told the Select Committee that the White House counsel's office probably had discussions about the electors' plan and that his deputy, Pat Philbin, would have been involved in evaluating the electors issue. In an informal committee interview, Philbin described the fake elector scheme as one of the bad theories that were like whack-a-mole in the White House during this period. Mr. Cipollone agreed with this characterization. In her testimony, Cassidy Hutchinson testified that she heard at least one member of the White House counsel's office say that the plan was not legal. Committee staff, to be clear, did you hear the White House counsel's office say that this plan to have alternate electors meet and cast votes for Donald Trump in states that he had lost was not legally sound? Hutchinson: Yes, sir. She also recalled a meeting that took place in or before mid-December during which this view was relayed to Giuliani and members of his team by lawyers in the White House counsel's office. By December 11, Findley emailed his main points of contact in 6 battleground states to say thank you for your work on the presidential elector project and, in order to pass off his responsibilities, let them know that Rudy's team has designated Kenneth CHESEBRO as the point person for the legal documents going forward. While the campaign's core legal team stepped back from the fake elector effort on December 11, it nonetheless went forward because Rudy was in charge of it and this is what he wanted to do. according to Findlay. When Findlay was asked if this decision to let the effort proceed under Giuliani's direction was coming from your client, the president, Findlay responded, "Yes, I believe so. I mean, he had made it clear that Rudy was in charge of this and that Rudy was executing what he wanted." Findlay also recalled being told that CHESEBRO's elector memos had become the justification for why Rudy and Ken were going to keep going forward with this stuff. He explained that Giuliani really bought into Ken's theory on this, and that the two of them were kind of the main ones driving this from that point forward. Clark told the Select Committee that, "My understanding of who was driving the process was Mayor Giuliani and his team." On December 10, when Kenneth CHESEBRO emailed one of the state party officials involved in organizing the fake elector effort in Nevada, he reported that, "I spoke this evening with Mayor Giuliani, who is focused on doing everything possible to ensure that all the Trump-Pence electors vote on December 14. In the days that followed this handoff, CHESEBRO would draft and distribute documents intended for use in the Trump team's fake elector ceremonies that were then shared with key contacts in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He also gave some of the groups step-by-step logistical guidance, such as when and where they should convene, how many copies each person would need to sign, and to send their fake votes to Congress via registered mail. Pretty simple. He commented in some of these emails. A campaign operative named Michael Roman was also tapped for a major operational role in the fake elector effort. When Findlay sent his email handing off certain responsibilities for the initiative, he also wrote that Giuliani's team had designated Roman as the lead for executing the voting on Monday, December 14. Roman was the Trump campaign's director of Election Day Operations, EDO, with team members who specialized in political outreach and mobilization in battleground states where the Trump team now urgently needed the fake electors to meet on December 14. With help from his EDO staff, as well as Giuliani's team and RNC staffers working alongside the campaign as part of the Trump Victory Committee, Roman ran an improvised electors whip operation. For example, Roman sent an email on December 12 directing an aide to create a tracker for the electors with tabs for Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, listing contact information, whether they had been contacted, whether they agreed to attend on December 14, and names of substitute electors to replace any reticent or unavailable participants as needed. Roman referred to others on this email as the WIMP team and directed them to fill out the spreadsheet, to update him on what you have and what you need, and to plan on a call that evening. In the days that followed, this group focused on tracking which Republicans previously named as President Trump's nominees to the Electoral College would be willing to show up for fake elector ceremonies, finding adequate substitutes for those who refused to attend, and actually coordinating the unrecognized elector signing ceremonies in 7 states on December 14. In all 7 states, these efforts to mobilize fake electors benefited from support from the RNC, as well as the state Republican parties. However, it was the Trump team who drove the process from start to finish, as one of the fake electors and later co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, Meshawn Maddock, told an audience in January 2022, "We fought to seat the electors. The Trump campaign asked us to do that." 3.4 Some of the proposed fake electors express concerns about the plan. The Trump team's fake elector plan raised concerns not just for several senior officials but also for some of the Republican activists being recruited to be the fake electors. Findlay told the Select Committee that there were definitely electors in probably most of the states that had concerns about this process. After being tasked with reaching out to the potential fake electors, Findlay notified his colleagues on December 10 that a lot of questions are arising from them. He also noted that an RNC staffer seconded to the Trump Victory Committee requested a call with the PA electors or leadership to address concerns, which may be necessary to get people to appear. The Republican Party of Pennsylvania's General Counsel relayed several specific concerns to the Trump campaign via email on December 13. Warning that we're all getting from concerned electors, he elaborated as follows. "I'm told that on the call with the electors they were told that the ballot form would be conditioned upon ultimate certification by the governor, indemnification by the campaign if someone gets sued or worse, charged with something by the AG or someone else, and the receipt by the electors of a legal opinion by a national firm and certified to be accurate by a Pennsylvania lawyer." What was sent was a memo by CHESEBRO not addressed to the electors, and no certification by a Pennsylvania lawyer. To make it worse, CHESEBRO describes the Pennsylvania plan as dicey. And there's no indication by anyone with authority that there's any indemnification authorized by the campaign. Pennsylvania GOP Chairman Lawrence Stab has informed the Select Committee that his state's fake electors never were indemnified by the Trump campaign. When Wisconsin Republican Party Chairman Andrew Hitt was notified in late November that the campaign wants to sick list of electors, he texted his executive director that I am concerned about their inquiry and that I hope they are not planning on asking us to do anything like try and say we are only the proper electors. On December 12, after Hitt received a message about a phone call with Giuliani to discuss the fake elector issue, he texted a colleague, "These guys are up to no good and it's gonna fail miserably." Despite such concerns, Hitt and many other fake electors participated anyway. Even so, 14 of the original Republicans who had been listed as Electoral College nominees on the November ballot bowed out when the fake Trump electors gathered in December. Former Michigan Secretary of State Terry Lynn Land declined to attend, which the state's GOP chair, Laura Cox, told the Select Committee was because I think she just said she was uncomfortable with the whole thing and that she has her own beliefs. A senior advisor for the Pennsylvania GOP said that Chairman Tabas did not serve as an elector because Joe Biden won the election and it was Biden's electors that were certified. Former U.S. Representative Tom Marino, Republican, from Pennsylvania, said he backed out because I'm a constitutionalist, and as a former prosecutor, when the Attorney General says that he's not finding anything there, that's good enough for me. The other 11 dropouts included a Georgia state lawmaker, a former state party chair from New Mexico, 2 former state party chairs from Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania's RNC National Committee woman. Other participants asserted that they would have had much greater concerns if the Trump team had been more forthcoming about how the fake electoral votes would be used. The Trump campaign's director of Election Day operations in Georgia told the Select Committee that I absolutely would not have wanted to participate in organizing the Trump team's fake electors in Georgia had I known that the 3 main lawyers for the campaign that I'd spoken to in the past and were leading up were not on board. He said he felt angry because no one really cared if people were potentially putting themselves in jeopardy by doing this, and we were just useful idiots or rubes at that point. 3.5 On December 14, the fake electors meet and vote. On December 14, using instructions provided by CHESEBRO, the fake Trump electors gathered and participated in signing ceremonies in all 7 states. Image, real versus fake documents. In 5 of these states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, and Wisconsin, the certificates they signed used the language that falsely declared themselves to be the duly elected and qualified electors from their state. This declaration was false because none of the signatories had been granted that official status by their state government in the form of a certificate of ascertainment. The paperwork signed by the fake Trump electors in 2 other states contained partial caveats. In New Mexico, the document they signed made clear that they were participating on the understanding that it might later be determined that we are the duly elected and qualified electors. In Pennsylvania, the document they signed indicated that they were participating on the understanding that if, as a result of a final non-appealable court order or other proceeding prescribed by law, we are ultimately recognized as being the duly elected and qualified electors. All 7 of these invalid sets of electoral votes were then transmitted to Washington, D.C. Roman's team member in Georgia, for example, sent him an email on the afternoon of December 14 that affirmed the following: all votes cast, paperwork complete, being mailed now. Ran pretty smoothly. Likewise, Findlay updated campaign manager Bill Stepien and his bosses on the legal team that the Trump team's slate in Georgia was not able to satisfy all provisions of state law but still voted as legally as possible under the circumstances before transmitting their fake votes to Washington, D.C., by mail. On the evening of December 14, RNC Chairwoman McDaniel provided an update for President Trump on the status of the fake elector effort. She forwarded President Trump's executive assistant an elector recap email, which conveyed that President Trump's electors voted not just in the states that he won but also in 6 contested states, specifically, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Minutes later, President Trump's executive assistant replied, "It's in front of him." The Trump team and the fake electors also engaged in acts of subterfuge to carry out their plans on December 14. For instance, A campaign staffer notified the Georgia participants via email that he must ask for your complete discretion. He explained that their efforts required complete secrecy, and told them to arrive at the state capitol building and please state to the guards that you are attending a meeting with either Senator Brandon Beach or Senator Burt Jones. Indeed, Greg Bluestein of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that he tried to enter this group's meeting room but a guy at the door called it an education meeting and scrambled when I tried to walk in. Former Michigan GOP Chair Laura Cox told the Select Committee that an attorney who said he was working with the president's campaign informed her that the Michigan slate for President Trump was planning to meet in the Capitol and hide overnight so that they could fulfill the role of casting their vote per law, in the Michigan chambers. She said that she told him in no uncertain terms that that was insane and inappropriate, and that she warned Michigan's Senate Majority Leader as a precaution. Instead, the group of fake electors in Michigan signed their paperwork in the state GOP headquarters, where staff told them not to bring phones inside. 3.6 The fallout from the fake elector plan. In spite of the Trump campaign's efforts to give the fake electors' votes the sheen of authenticity, they failed. The U.S. Senate parliamentarian noted in correspondence by January 3 that materials from the Trump team's supposed electors in Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania had no seal of the state and no evidence votes were delivered by the executive of the state for signature by electors, and, as a result, these materials fail to meet requirements of federal law. Similarly, the Senate parliamentarian noted that the Trump team's slates from Georgia, New Mexico, and Pennsylvania appeared to violate another statute which requires the approval of the governor for the substitution of electors. Meanwhile, the documents from Michigan and Wisconsin did not even arrive to Congress on time, so they also had missed the required statutory deadline. Several of the Trump team's fake electoral slates also failed to follow state rules specifying where they were required to meet. In Georgia and Wisconsin, state lawmakers or their staff appear to have helped participants gather inside their state capitals. But in Michigan, the fake Trump electors were blocked from entering the state capitol building. Despite this, they still signed documents attesting that they convened and organized in the state capitol, in the city of Lansing, Michigan, and at 2 p.m., performed the duties enjoined upon us. That document had been signed earlier in the day off-site, and one of the signatories even told the committee she didn't join their march to the state capitol building because she didn't see a need to go. If the entire premise of the fake votes was not enough, these infirmities also meant that they had no legal relevance. In no way could they ever have been used by the vice president to disregard the real votes of electors chosen by the voters. In the weeks between December 14 and January 6, President Trump's team continued to embrace the idea that the fake electoral votes had a purpose. Although Giuliani and White House speechwriter Stephen Miller made public comments on December 14 suggesting that the uncertified Trump votes were merely contingent, that pretense was dropped in short order. For example, on December 17, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said on Fox News that in numerous states there has been an alternate slate of electors voted upon that Congress will decide in January. On December 21, President Trump and Vice President Pence each joined parts of a White House meeting in which members of Congress from the Freedom Caucus encouraged the vice president to reject Biden electors from one or more of the 7 contested states. And days later, Eastman cited the existence of the fake votes in an email to Boris Epshteyn, a member of the Giuliani legal team, writing, "The fact that we have multiple slates of electors demonstrates the uncertainty of either. That should be enough." As discussed further in Chapter 5, that email contained Eastman's 2-page memo proposing a strategy for January 6 based on the incorrect legal theory that Vice President Pence could assert some authority as President of the Senate to prevent or delay the election of former Vice President Biden during the joint session. Eastman's memo relied on the fake votes, which the memo featured in the very first line. 7 states have transmitted dual slates of electors. When Eastman submitted his memo to Epshteyn, he also copied CHESEBRO, who had edited the memo and called it really awesome. By that point, CHESEBRO and Eastman were coordinating their arguments about the fake elector votes and how they should be used. On January 1, 2021, CHESEBRO sent an email to Eastman and Epshteyn that recommended that Vice President Pence derail the joint session of Congress. In it, he raised the idea of Vice President Pence declaring that there are 2 competing slates of electoral votes in several states, and taking the position that only he, or possibly Congress, could resolve any disputes concerning them. 2 days later, Eastman completed his second major memo advising President Trump and his team on strategies for January 6, again arguing that there were dual slates of electors from 7 states, and calling for Vice President Pence to assert power to act as the ultimate arbiter to take steps that could overturn the election, either by sending the election back to state legislatures to reassess or by rejecting Biden's certified electoral votes from states in which there were also fake Trump electors. By early January, most of the fake elector votes had arrived in Washington, except those from Michigan and Wisconsin. Undeterred, the Trump team arranged to fly them to Washington and hand-deliver them to Congress for the vice president himself. Freaking Trump idiots want someone to fly original elector papers to the Senate president. Wisconsin Republican Party official Mark Jefferson wrote to party chairman Hitt on January 4. Hitt responded, "Okay, I see I have a missed call from Mike Roman and a text from someone else. Did you talk to them already? This is just nuts." The next day, Trump campaign deputy director for Election Day operations G. Michael Brown sent a text message to other campaign staff suggesting that he was the person who delivered the fake votes to Congress. After sending the group a photo of his face with the Capitol in the background, Brown said, "This has got to be the cover of a book I write one day and I should probably buy Mike Roman a tie or something for sending me on this one. Hasn't been done since 1876 and it was only 3 states that did it." The reference to 1876 alludes to a controversy during that election about certain states' electoral college votes. Image, Senator Ron Johnson, February 12, 2021. Photo by Samuel Coram, Getty Images. President Trump and his campaign apparently had assistance from allies on Capitol Hill for this effort, including Senator Ron Johnson, his chief of staff, and the chief of staff to Representative Mike Kelly, although Senator Johnson has said that his involvement in that attempt to deliver fake elector paperwork spanned the course of a couple seconds. On the morning of January 6, Representative Kelly's then chief of staff texted an aide to the vice president, Chris Hodgson, about hand-delivering the fake elector votes to the vice president's team before the joint session, a message that Hodgson ignored, just following up any chance you or someone from your team can meet to take the Michigan and Wisconsin packets. According to the office of Senator Ron Johnson, Representative Kelly's chief of staff then had a phone call with Senator Johnson's chief of staff at 11:58 a.m. about how Kelly's office could get us the electors, because they had it. Shortly after 11:30 a.m., the Trump campaign's lead attorney in Wisconsin had texted Senator Johnson expressing a need to get a document on Wisconsin electors to you for the VP immediately. "Is there a staff person I can talk to immediately?" Senator Johnson then put his chief of staff in touch with the campaign to handle the issue. Shortly afterwards, Senator Johnson's chief of staff texted Hodgson, "Senator Johnson needs to hand something to us, please advise." When Hodgson asked what it was, the response he got was, "Alternate slate of electors for me and why because archivists didn't receive them." Hodgson did not mince words, "Do not give that to him, the vice president." Image, Senator Mike Lee, April 28, 2016. Photo by Lee Vogel, Getty Images. He's about to walk over to preside over the joint session. Those were supposed to come in through the mail. Those fake electoral votes, which the Trump team tried for weeks to manufacture and deliver, never made it to the vice president. But they would have been invalid even if they did arrive on time. The Trump team's activities were based on the false pretense that these fake electoral votes had a decisive role to play at the joint session of Congress. And yet any such role that they could have played would have helped unlawfully obstruct an official proceeding that determines how our nation carries out the peaceful transfer of power between presidents. Indeed, as the joint session approached, Senator Mike Lee had expressed grave concerns about the fake elector effort in a series of text messages to one of the Trump team's senior legal advisors. Although Senator Lee had spent a month encouraging the idea of having state legislatures endorse competing electors for Trump, he grew alarmed as it became clear that the Trump team wanted the fake electors' votes to be considered on January 6 even without authorization from any state government body. On December 30, Senator Lee texted Trump advisor Cleta Mitchell that January 6 was a dangerous idea, including for the republic itself. He explained that, "I don't think we have any valid basis for objecting to the electors because it cannot be true that we can object to any state's presidential electors simply because we don't think they handled their election well or suspect illegal activity." Senator Lee even questioned her about the plan's dangerous long-term consequences, Will you please explain to me how this doesn't create a slippery slope problem for all future presidential elections? Thank you for your time. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and share this video with others. Endnotes are shown, but not read.